I ranked all 310 Pokemon abilities from worst to best. We're back for part 2, and in part 1 covered spots 310 to 215. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, then go watch that and come back to this after. I go over all the ranking criteria there, so I'm not going to waste time doing it again. But I will mention I'm hosting a Metronome Battle Tournament December 21st for my Discord members and giving away $100 in gift cards. I'll explain a bit more later on, but let's just get straight back into the list. We have reached the solid tier of abilities. These abilities generally can be taken advantage of in most matchups or give a Pokemon a solid niche or utility. They are a little bit above the okay tier we left off on. First for this video, in spot 214, Opportunist edges itself into the solid tier. This ability allows the user to copy an opposing Pokemon stat changes when they occur. It's kinda like Co-Star, except you copy your opponent instead of ally. In fact, this ability cannot copy allies. Any stat changes have to happen when the Opportunist user is on the field. It's just too bad the one user, Espafra, would much rather use Speed Boost, so we don't really get to see the full potential of this ability. Spots 213 and 212 go to Lingering Aroma and Mummy. These abilities share the same effect. If a Pokemon makes contact with a user, they will gain these abilities in place of their own. It can affect form changing abilities, but is in general a good way to take away some powerful abilities from your opponent. Mummy is higher, as Cofagrigus is a better user of it, and Oinkologne would usually prefer Thickfat. Above these abilities in spot 211, I have Wandering Spirit. This is exclusive to the Runerigus line. Instead of just replacing the target's ability upon contact, it exchanges them. So in this case, Runerigus can actually gain a useful ability to replace its own. Most Pokemon like to run beneficial abilities, so this is almost always a good trade. You will lose the gain ability upon switch, but grabbing a useful ability for a few turns definitely puts it a bit higher. Those abilities all don't affect form changing abilities, like the one in spot 210, Hunger Switch. This is Mmp-Pokepedia signature ability and changes it from full belly to hangry mode at the end of each turn. All this really does is change the type of Mmp-Pokepedia signature move Aura Wheel from electric in full belly mode to dark in hangry mode. It might not seem like much, but it essentially gives Mmp-Pokepedia both stabs in one slot. And it is a pretty good move with 110 base power and raising speed one stage. The only downside is maybe having to run Protect if you need your other typing for Aura Wheel. Spot 209 is a solid ability in Heat Proof. It was a signature ability on the Bronzong line for a while, but now has a couple more users. Heat Proof halves the damage taken from fire type attacks while also halving any burn damage. This is pretty good considering every user, besides Roly-Coly, is weak to fire, so it gets rid of a weakness. Bronzong can use this sneakily, as most people will assume you're running Levitate, so they probably won't go for a ground move. Sinistcha also likes this in singles, as its other ability is doubles exclusive. 208 is one you'll have to bear with me. This goes to Zen Mode. Zen Mode changes Darmanitan's form when it's below 50% of its max HP. Now this is absolutely terrible on regular Darmanitan, and would be almost 100 spots lower. But Galarian Darmanitan Zen Mode is actually really good. They both give a 60 point stat increase and additional typing, but Galarian Darmanitan plays to his strengths by giving a huge speed and attack boost, while OG Darm Zen Mode kills its speed and attack in order to make it a slow, bulky special attacker. Since it's listed as the same ability, I can't do these separate, so I pretty much averaged it out. So just know, OG Darm would be way lower, and Galarian Darm Zen Mode would be a good chunk higher. On to 207, here I have Oblivious. This ability has seen a series of buffs over the gens to become useful. It originally just prevented Infatuation and the move Captivate, but it later gained immunity to the move Taunt as well, and in Gen 8, an immunity to Intimidate. The Intimidate one is pretty big, and Pokemon like Mamoswine, Whiscash, and Licky Licky can use these to avoid Intimidate spam and not get taunted when trying to set up rocks, stat boosts, or pass wishes in Licky Licky's case. In spot 206, I have Synchronize. This is a fun ability that will pass on Burn, Paralysis, or Poison if inflicted upon the user directly from another Pokemon. So a Toxic used against a Synchronized user will also Toxic the Toxic user. This is a pretty solid ability on Pokemon like Umbreon, Mew, and Musharna, but it is usually outclassed otherwise. It would be a lot better if it synchronized Sleep, Freeze, Confusion, and Infatuation as well. Also, its effect isn't as good since a lot of Pokemon using status moves like Will-O-Wisp, Toxic, and Thunder Wave that guarantee status are usually immune to that status by virtue of their typing. So it will activate, but will have no effect in those situations. 205 is a pretty good ability in White Smoke. It protects the user from having their stats lowered by other Pokemon. This blocks any status moves or attacking moves that have secondary effects of lowering stats. It blocks Intimidate and other abilities that can lower stats as well. It just is never seen since every user has other great abilities. So even though I will have Clear Body a good chunk higher, it's mainly because the users benefit from it a lot more, even though they have the same effects. This is the difficulty of these types of lists, where distribution is somewhat factored in. In spot 204, the ability Long Reach pokes its head out. This ability prevents any effects activated from contact from happening. So Rocky Helmet, Rough Skin, Flame Body, Static, anything that can activate on a contact move is nulled and void. This is exclusive to the Decidueye line and can be helpful to avoid being punished on moves like Brave Bird, U-Turn, and Leaf Blade. I would love to see it on another mon, as this is a really cool ability as essentially a free protective pads. Spot 203 and 202 are another pair of identical abilities in Shell Armor and Battle Armor. These abilities protect the users from critical hits, even if guaranteed from moves like Wicked Blow. This is nice for setting up defense boosts and not worrying about a rogue crit ruining your day. Even though this is a great effect, other abilities are generally more useful in the users of these abilities, so they aren't always seen. But each ability has a couple mons that use it as their main ability, and not worrying about crits is always a good time. Just outside the top 200 at 201 is Aftermath. Aftermath is a pretty cool ability. It requires the user to feint via a contact move to activate. When it activates, the Pokemon making contact will take 1/4 of their max HP and damage. It's a cool ability to see on Skuntank, Garbodor, and sometimes Electro lines. It's definitely not ideal in Nuzlocke and doesn't work if a damp user is present, but other than that, it can be a pretty good use of a weakened Pokemon to sack off and get some good damage in turn. Here we are, the top 200, and my hands are really aching from writing the script. I would even go as far to say they are oozing, which brings us to spot 200 with the ability Liquid Ooze. This is one of my personal favorites, even though it clearly isn't one of the better abilities. It causes HP draining moves used on the Oozer to deal the amount of damage it would have otherwise healed. Moves like Leech Seed, Giga Drain, Leech Life will all cause the user to lose HP. My favorite is Strength Sap though, which a lot of times can just straight KO with Liquid Ooze. This is another good ability not well distributed, but has a ton of potential. Spot 199 goes to Cotton Down. This ability belongs on the Eldegoss line and is a lot like Gooey and Tangling Hair. Instead of lowering speed on contact, this ability lowers speed when hit by any damaging move. This affects all other Pokemon on the field too, which can be cool in doubles to lower both foes' speed. Eldegoss has one of the best abilities in Regenerator, so this ability isn't really seen, but it is a clear upgrade to the other speed lowering abilities, and I felt it belonged a bit higher. Spot 198 is Power Spot. This is in the middle of a few signature abilities, with this one belonging to Stonejourner. Power Spot increases the power of moves used by allies by 30%. This is a really nice boost to have, but unfortunately the one user has a terrible defensive typing and atrocious special bulk, so it can't really stay alive long enough to get a net positive out of this ability. It also has virtually no effect in singles either, so in lower tiers where Stonejourner could be useful, it pretty much has no ability. Spot 197 goes to the ability Battery. Battery raises the power of allies' special moves by 30%. This is an objectively worse power spot, but was on a way better support user. Eviolite Charjabug can take some hits and provide much more support. So this is a rare instance where I will rank an inferior ability a bit higher. In spot 196, Bad Dreams haunts this list. Darkrai's signature ability damages sleeping opponents by 1/8 of their max HP at the end of each turn. This was a lot better when Darkrai had a more reliable method of inducing sleep, but nowadays it doesn't always want to chance Hypnosis in its 60% accuracy, so Darkrai has to ramble on without an ability for the most part. It still can be a good ability as it gives an extra incentive to try and sleep your target, and you can always get use from swapping in on a mon already sleeping for another ally or self-proc from rest. Spot 195 is Bulletproof. It provides an immunity from ball and bomb moves. This ability is similar to Soundproof, but I feel has a couple actual prominent users and protects against a lot more useful moves. The Como-O and Chestnut lines enjoy immunities to common attacks like Shadow Ball, Sledge Bomb, Focus Blast, Aura Spear, Acid Spray, Weather and Pyro Ball, among other attacks. Spot 194 goes to RKS System. This is Silvali's signature ability. It changes Silvali's type to match the corresponding memory it's holding. This gives Silvali the ability to choose its typing, and the memory will change its signature move, Multi-Attack, to this typing, giving it a physical 120 base power stab attack. This ability can't be removed in any way, and makes Silvali a pretty versatile lower tier mon. Are you feeling lucky? Spot 193 sees Super Luck. This gives the user's move an increased critical hit chance. This can be used with a scope lens to boost the probability of getting a crit to 50% on most moves and 100% on moves with increased crit rates. Togekiss loves this in doubles, while mons like Absol, Honchkrow, and Unfezant can threaten huge damage in singles. It's a really fun ability as crits can break through defensive setup Pokemon and give you a major damage boost. In spot 192, we have a more defensive ability in Overcoat. Overcoat provides an immunity to weather damage, which is just Sandstorm since Hail turned to Snow, but it luckily also gives an immunity to Powder and Spore effects. So moves like Spore, Sleep Powder, Rage Powder, and a few others will have no effect, while Effect Spore can activate against an Overcoat user. This is pretty nice as it gives the same effect as the item Safety Goggles, which isn't uncommon to see in doubles play. It's definitely a little less useful on some mons now that the only weather it blocks is Sandstorm, but nonetheless it still has its uses. You thirsty yet? For more Matt Bud content, I hope. Yeah! Remember to subscribe to the channel. I will quench your thirst with spot 191, Hydration. This ability heals the user of their status condition at the end of the turn if Rain is active. You can still be status, but Hydration will cure it before any burn or poison damage is taken. This is nice on Manaphy for setting up and getting a pretty much free full heal with rest, as it will be woken up without having to burn 2 turns. The same strategy can be used for other Pokemon if you know Rain will be present. It synergizes well that most hydration Pokemon are going to also be using water moves, which makes it more worth it to bring Rain around. Woof woof dudes. Dogs, brother. In spot 190 is the ability Guard Dog. Guard Dog is like the ability Suction Cups, but better. It prevents other Pokemon from forcing the user out. But in addition to this, it also has the effect of raising the user's attack if affected by Intimidate. This is a pretty badass effect to counter Intimidate spam. It just sucks we don't see much of this ability with its low distribution, so you'll mainly just see Okidoki take advantage. Spot 189 is a signature ability that really isn't signature in Airlock. This is Rayquaza's signature ability and has the same function as Cloud9. This ability is a lot more effective in competitive play thanks to it being able to counter Kyogre's Rain and Groudon's Sun by removing their effects while active. It can also mess with other weather abusers like Swift Swimmers and Chlorophyll Sweepers. Above Airlock in spot 188 is Curse Body. This ability has a 30% chance to disable any damaging move it's hit by. This has an advantage over the abilities that require contact to activate, making it viable against any attacker. A free disable can force out a Pokemon who only has that attack to do damage and destroys choice Pokemon. It can also free you up to swap in an ally who is scared of a certain move, as you know they can't use it for a few more turns. And spot 187 is Galvanize. This ability is exclusive to the Alolan Golem line. This is an ability with really good potential, as it turns normal moves into electric moves and gives them a 1.2 times power boost. It is a pretty good boost to moves like Double Edge and Explosion for sure, but I just can't justify putting it up with the other similar abilities. This is mostly because the one user of this ability doesn't even really use it. Its only niches depend on its other abilities, so I would need to see more results before boosting this higher. In spot 186, I have Terraform Zero. This ability activates on Terrapagos when terastallized, and it actually removes any current weather and terrains from the field. This is different than Cloud9 and Airlock that nullify the effects when active. This ability does require you to use your Terra, but it can deny your opponent's terrain and weather boosts. You can deny an Aurora Veil by stopping snow, get rid of Sandstorm's Pedef boost to rock types, and Ice defense boosts in snow. A lot of good can come from shutting down these teams' weather and terrains. This ability only activates once when first terrestrialized, so even though it can be amazing, it is situational and a one and done. Then you have no ability for the rest of the battle. Bot 185 sees Effect Spore. Effect Spore has a 30% chance to cause a status when hit by a contact move. This can be poison, paralysis, or even sleep. It has some advantages over abilities like Static, Poison Point, and Flame Body, since it can still poison electric type or sleep a poison type, since they are immune to paralysis and poison respectively. The downsides are that this ability can affect grass types, overcoat users, or safety goggles holders. So while it can be good, it often isn't seen too much. It also doesn't help that a lot of the better users have cracked abilities they don't want to pass up on. And Spot 184 is an ability I originally had a lot higher in Sand Spit. This is exclusive to Sandaconda, and when hit by a damaging move, the user summons a Sandstorm for 5 turns. Since weather summoning abilities are generally really good, I wanted to have this high good tier, but the lone user doesn't even go for this ability and isn't a reliable option as your sand setter. It requires a user to take a hit to set up sand, so your opponent can either play around it or maybe just KO you, limiting your sand turns. In Spot 183, I have Embody Aspect, but the first of 4 in Cornerstone Mask. These abilities are listed separately, at least on Mvlpedia, so I am giving them their own entries. Cornerstone Mask raises the defense stat of Ogerpon by 1 stage when terrestrialized. The pro is this ability can reactivate when swapped in and out. The cons being you have to commit your Terror to this and go to a mono rock type, which is worse off defensively. In Spot 182, topping off the solid tier, another signature legendary ability, or I guess I should say mythical ability, appears. It is Poison Puppeteer. This ability can only be used by Pecharunt and will confuse a Pokemon who is poisoned by any of Pecharunt's moves. It is a pretty handy ability considering most of the time you will be spamming Malignant Chain, which has a 50% chance to badly poison. Stacking Confusion onto Poison can easily force a switch and let you try to nab another Poison, chipping away at your opponent's team. Just gonna take a quick breather to mention my Discord server you can join. We discuss video ideas, share all things competitive Pokemon related, and I host a monthly showdown tournament that Discord members can join and stream it here on YouTube. We're doing a Metronome battle tournament Saturday, December 21st. This format is almost entirely RNG based, besides building your 2 members, giving them abilities and items, so competitive experience isn't required to have a shot at winning. The top 4 contestants will split $100 in gift cards of their choice that will come right out of my wallet. All you have to do is join my Discord server and sign up. You can also support the amount of time and effort that goes into these big ass videos by either becoming a Patreon supporter, which gets you additional channel and Discord perks like priority on tournament buy rounds, or if you just want to support the channel once, I have a buy me a coffee page if you want to throw $1.50 at me so I can buy a Costco hot dog. Alright, 181 more abilities, let's do it. We are now on to the good tier. Get a big stretch before this tier, as it has the most amount of abilities with 72. These abilities are either commonly seen in competitive for just having good effects, and also includes a good amount of abilities that could be a lot higher if distributed onto better users. In Spot 181, I have Zero to Hero. This is the ability I had the largest debate about. My boy Magnus and I argued so much about it when tiering. This is a difficulty in abilities that strictly provide a form change. This could be a lot higher, or could be as low as Schooling depending on your perspective. The main difference is the fact that Palafin is good competitively. Palafin transforms to its hero form when swapped out thanks to this ability. So on one hand, do we say Palafin is helped by this ability? Or do we say that it's a crux, that you have to use a turn switching out for this Pokemon to become useful? Once Palafin is transformed, it doesn't really have an ability. It's pretty much saying, what if we gave Slaking Honeygather? Its sheer base stat total and busted signature move make them on, not the ability. So take this ranking in which direction you feel, but I just have it at the bottom of good since Palafin is busted. Back to more rankable abilities, in Spot 180 is Steelworker. a nice ability seen on Dhelmise. The user's attacking stats are multiplied 1.5 times when using a steel type move. This essentially gives Dhelmise a third stab, powering up his anchor shot and heavy slam a lot. Steel isn't the greatest typing, but it gives stronger coverage to this hard hitting attacker. Similar to Steelworker, spot 179 goes to Rocky Payload. It is seen on Bombardier, and instead of powering up steel attacks by 1.5 times, it powers up rock type attacks. This is a lot better of a typing to run as coverage, and as a faster mon, Bombardier can have more opportunity to use boosted moves like Rock Slide and get that nice flinch chance. Narrowly above Rocky Payload in spot 178 is Steely Spirit. So this is just like the previous two, except Steely Spirit powers up the users and allies steel type moves by 50%. It can be used in singles to just further power up your steel stat, but also has supportive applications. Steel Spam isn't the greatest archetype, but at least it has no immunities to it. Above the type boosting abilities, in spot 177, I have the status curing ability Shed Skin. This ability has seen a resurgence as of late, I feel. Shed Skin has a 1 in 3 chance of curing a Pokemon status condition at the end of each turn. This includes the initial turn that has acquired it. This is seen on setup Pokemon like Scrafty, Sandaconda, Seviper, and Arbok to acquire boosts and then rest them off, potentially waking up immediately or a turn early. It can also just help them shrug off burn, poison, or paralysis. It's a genuinely helpful ability and can be really annoying to break through. 176 is another signature ability, this time for a starter. It is Liquid Voice, the Primarina line's ability that changes all sound moves into water type moves. This gives stab to moves like Hyper Voice and Psychic Noise to give Primarina better stab attacks. Nothing too crazy, but getting an upgrade in your stab on moves that go through substitutes is nice. It's just a shame this ability doesn't also give a boost like the 8 abilities. It could be closer to the top 100 if that was the case. The ability in spot 175, you ask? Well, it's Dancer. Yep. Oricoreo's cool ability allows it to immediately use a dance move whenever another Pokemon uses one. This consists of 12 dance moves and can be useful to copy most of them. The problem in singles is about half of these are signature moves, and other moves like Quiver Dance or Fiery Dance you would like to enjoy are pretty limited distribution wise. But in doubles, you can trigger Dance via your ally using a dance move, so you can pair it with something like Volcarona, the double Quiver, or Fiery Dance, or Como-O, the double Clangorous Soul. Up in spot 174 is Marvel Scale. This is essentially a melodic signature ability, but Dragonite's pre-evolutions get it now too. It raises the user's defense 50% when statused. This can often be seen on Flame or Melodic to make it super tanky on both sides, and also avoids worse status for it like Poison and Para. It's a nice example of a simple ability that works on its primary user and can even be activated by just using Rest or absorbing status if you don't want to use your item slot to proc it. Onto 173, we have a cool Gen 8 ability in Ripen. This ability doubles the effect of held berries when consumed. So a citrus berry would heal 50% instead of 25%. Damage reduction berries will further reduce damage, while stat boosting berries will double the stat boost. It is a nice ability for Appleton to get some big heals off, and Flapple could use it if it isn't going all out with Hustle. I would like to see this one distributed more, as it could be a lot higher on the list if better berry abusers had access. In spot 172 is a Gen 9 signature ability named Hospitality. It belongs to the Sinestria line and only works in doubles, but it has a pretty solid effect of healing your ally by 25% upon switching. This is usually just a guaranteed value ability you can keep in the back. 25% can be game changing, especially for a bulky Pokemon trying to get or stay out of KO range. It provides nice team support, can restore Sturdy or Sash, and who doesn't like free HP? In spot 171, the RNG ability Quick Draw appears. This is a really fun ability that lets its user Galarian Slowbro have a 30% chance to move first in its priority bracket. With base 30 speed, you aren't usually going first, so this is a very helpful ability and can just be super clutch. Not many abilities can make a mon forgo using Regenerator, especially in singles, but this one usually does. Paired with Quick Claw, you had a pretty solid chance to get one of them to proc and outspeed the opposition. Not as fun of an ability in spot 170, this goes to Dauntless Shield. This is a signature ability of box art legendary Zamazenta. It provides the user with a +1 to its defense upon entry. This was nerfed to only activate the first time the user is sent into battle, thus its mid placement, but it is still really useful if you can send Zamazenta when it is ready to do some work. This synergizes well with Stab Body Press, which calculates damage using the defense stat, so having a +1 not only makes you bulkier, but also increases your main damaging attack. It can come in and tank physical health very well against common threats thanks to this ability. And of course, it would be a lot higher if it worked like it did in its debut gen. Spot 169, the second of our 69 spots, and 168 go to Embody Aspect Teal and Wellspring respectively. These are pretty close for me. Teal Mask gives a +1 speed boost when terrestrialized, and Wellspring Mask gives a special defense boost. Wellspring form is obviously better competitively, but I feel the speed boost is overall the better stat boost. You do get the Terra into the better defensive typing and have 2 stabs with Wellspring, which ultimately gives it the edge in this ranking. Spot 167 goes to another Gen 9 ability in Wind Rider. This ability not only gives an immunity to wind moves, but increases the user's attack if hit by one, or if Tailwind activates on the user's side. This puts it way higher than the terrible wind power counterpart. The Pokemon who have access are both part grass as well, which is amazing as most of the common wind moves are flying and ice type, while also getting an immunity to the common heat wave. It isn't the widest pool of moves, but it covers a lot of important ones that these mons would be weak to otherwise. In spot 166, Steam Engine Treks On. This ability is exclusive to the Colossal line, and actually gave this otherwise forgettable mon a niche as a sweeper in doubles. If hit by a fire or water type move, the user has its speed stat increased by 6 stages. This actually allows the terribly slow Colossal to outspeed mons as fast as max speed Scarf Zeraora while still being able to run a modest nature. It works amazing with weakness policy, as you can use a weak water move to proc both in doubles for an easy setup. It's just not as strong without the G-Max gimmick in place. Spot 165 is an immunity ability in Motor Drive. It grants full immunity to electric moves, and if hit by one, it will raise the user's speed by 1 stage. Any type immunity ability is good, and ones that also raise your stats are even better. You can use it to even block Volt Switch pivoting, or just swap in to gain an outspeed. Spot 164 might shock you. It goes to Static. This can be a clutch ability, as it gives the user 30% chance to paralyze an attacker that hits it with a contact move. It is used on Pokemon like Zapdos, Stunfisk, the Voltorb lines, and more to get a cheeky status. Swap in on a U-turn and paralyze that pesky Scizor, or have a good chance to proc against a multi-strike move that makes contact. In spot 163, Volt Absorb appears. It is slightly higher than Motor Drive, granting the same electric immunity, but instead of a speed boost, it heals a user by up to 25% of their max HP. This is just useful in more scenarios than Motor Drive, and more Pokemon can take advantage of it. Lantern, Jolteon, Zeraora, and Thundurus are all real good users, and this is just a good immunity to have on the team. Ability 162 in the list is Innards Out. The Pukester returns to the channel with a respectable ranking for his signature ability. Innards Out can be Aftermath on steroids. When the user is knocked out, it deals damage equal to the amount of HP it had left before the last hit. So you can swap Pyukumuku in against a setup mon, and potentially just KO it if you have high enough HP and go down. It doesn't require contact like Aftermath either, so it almost always guarantees value. The timing aspect is essential to make this ability effective, and it would be great to see it on a Pokemon that could also use attacking moves and wasn't so passive. Spots 161 and 160 bring identical abilities again. I have Terravolt and Turbo Blaze here. These are Mold Breaker clones exclusive to Zekrom, Reshiram, and their Kyurem fusions. These abilities ignore most other abilities that would affect the user's moves. So Zekrom's Fusion Bolt can't be Volt Absorbed, Reshiram's Fusion Flare can't be absorbed by Flash Fire, and it can ignore other abilities like Sturdy and Multiscale. I have these lower than Mold Breaker as in context with the Pokemon. These abilities don't offer too much in the Uber's metagame these mons are popular in. You can ignore Thick Fat with Kyurem's ice moves as well, so there is genuine value here, just not as much application as Mold Breaker. Spot 159 is Victinu's Victory Star. It grants a 10% accuracy boost to itself and allies. Being more accurate is so important, and it makes using lower accuracy moves a lot less risky. Victini's V-Crate actually only has 95% accuracy, but Victory Star boosts it over 100. It also boosts strong special moves like Heat Wave, Blue Flare, and Overheat to almost perfect accuracy, and boosts other moves like Bolt Strike and Zed Headbutt for physical sets. If you want a more reliable Will-O-Wisp user, you have a 93.5% accurate one with Victini on the field, plus a 99% accurate Thunder Wave and Toxic. It's a shame Mythicals couldn't have their time in VGC. I think you would see a good amount of Victini in this ability. Watch out, Spot 158 is Reckless. This ability increases the power of moves that have recoil or crash damage by 20%. It's a great ability for Pokemon like Staraptor, the Mienshao line, Emboar, and Hitmonlee. Recoil moves are usually pretty powerful to begin with, so the 20% increase can be quite substantial on Brave Birds, high jump kicks, and head smashes. Spot 157 is a cool one. This goes to Infiltrator. This ability lets a user bypass the effects of the target screens, so Reflect, Light Screen, Aurora Veil, Safeguard, and Miss will not have an effect. But perhaps a bigger part of this ability that makes it good is being able to bypass substitutes. This can save you big time against sub setup Pokemon. Speedy Pokemon like Crobat, Dragapult, and Noivern can finish off a Pokemon that has subbed up or come in and status stun before they set up. Their status moves aren't blocked by sub, so preventing any sub shenanigans is made easy. Ignoring screens is very nice too, as your damage won't be halved, and the Pheromons that need that support will be in danger. In spot 156, Cheek Pouch sees itself mid-good tier. This is an underrated ability seen on rodent Pokemon and restores a user by 30% of their max HP after consuming a berry. This is great on Dedenne, Ingredient, to grab a citrus berry heal, and usually go up to full after the Cheek Pouch activation. It can provide a lot more setup opportunity and almost always guarantees another hit survival in the lower tiers these mons reside in. Couple it with Recycle and you have essentially a reliable recovery move on these users. On to spot 155 is the ability Corrosion. This officially brings us halfway done the list. Holy shit, we're only halfway done. Alright, this ability allows the user to poison Steel and Poison types. It turns a Pokemon like Salazzle into the ultimate Toxic Staller, as it can sub or tech Toxic any mon that doesn't have an ability that counters Poison. We are lucky it is not on a Pokemon at all, but it does have the speed to pull this strategy off if it can grab a 3-turn. This isn't really seen on the other user Gilmora because it has a cracked ability Toxic Debris, but could still run a Toxic Stall set with Spiky Shield, but Salazzle's speed overall makes it better at this role. In spot 154, we have the legendary ability Pressure. This doubles the amount of PP consumed when a move is targeted against a user. It is seen very commonly on legendary Pokemon, but also a good amount of regular ones. This is a stalling ability, as a lot of time it is used with moves like Substitute, Protect, and a healing move to run your opponent's attacking moves out of PP and make them useless. If they swap out to conserve PP, then you usually get a free substitute and attack off. Pressure Kyurem and Suicune are notorious for this. Other mons like Corviknight and Eternatus can spam recovery to defeat would-be checks as well. It's an annoying ability to face, especially since most stronger moves have lower PP and will run out quite fast. Spot 153 is a doubles exclusive ability called Commander. VGC players should be very familiar with this, as Dondozo and Tatsugiri have been a steady presence in competitive play. This ability requires Tatsugiri to be active with a partner Dondozo. The Don will slurp up the little sushi, giving it a +1 to all of its stats. It prevents these Pokemon from switching and essentially results in a 2-on-1. The move Order Up will give Dondozo a stat boost depending on Tatsugiri's form. The 2-on-1 can be pretty bad depending on the matchup, but there is a reason this combo continues to get used, and when Dondozo's unaware, Commander strategies can be hard to beat as you cannot phase it out. Overall, a good ability that sees regular use in doubles. Spot 152 sees a defensive ability in Natural Cure. This ability cures the user's status condition upon switching out. It is very useful for Pokemon like Chansey and Blissey, who love to come in and absorb hits and status and can heal it off and swap out like nothing happened. Altaria, Celebi, and Shaman are other solid users of this ability, able to reliably heal damage and status. It sees use on almost all the mons who get it, which is a pretty telling sign that the ability is good. Spot 151 is a great support ability in Aroma Veil. This ability prevents the user and allies from being affected by moves like Taunt, Torment, Encore, Disable, and Heal Block, while also giving an immunity to Curse Body and Infatuation. Pretty much anything that would limit their move choices besides Imprison. It is good in singles for mons like Aromatisse and Alcremie, who like to heal and pass wishes in Aromatisse's case. Not worrying about Taunt, Encore, or Disable is great, and being able to passively grant that to allies makes it even better, as your setup mons can't be countered by Prankster, Taunt, or Encore users who would normally ruin them. Into the top 150, I'm gonna break the mold with Mold Breaker. This has the same effects as Terravolt and Turbo Blaze, but overall better users that can take advantage of it. This is commonly seen on Excadrill, who loves breaking through Sturdy, Levitate to hit Earthquakes, and Mimikyu's Disguise, set up rocks through Magic Bounce, ignore Unaware with its Sword Dance sets. This applies to other Pokemon like Haxorus, who likes to ignore most of the same abilities. Mons like Mega Gyarados and Ampharos like being able to hit through water and electric absorbing abilities, while Defog Moldbreaker Hawlucha is infamously a way to get around ultimate entry hazard removal blocker Golden Go. Ogerpon Herflame also appreciates breaking past Flash Fire and Sap Sipper with its stabs. So while it's not a top tier ability, it has a ton of good practical uses. Onto 149, I have another duo with Rough Skin, and in spot 148, Iron Barbs. These are defensive abilities that cause any Pokemon making contact with these users to lose 1/8 of their max HP. This is a pretty good amount of chip damage and is on some pretty bulky mons like Garchomp, Ferrothorn, and Druddigon, I guess. This is often paired with a Rocky Helmet to deal considerable chip damage and can really punish multi-strike moves, as each hit will activate this ability again. It can really make you double think clicking moves like U-turn or punish a resisted hit upon switching, as the chip adds up fast, especially in the switch heavy singles metas. Spot 147 brings us to Weak Armor. This ability raises the user's speed by 2 stages when hit by a contact move, and also lowers their defense by 1 stage. It's much better now, since it used to only raise speed by 1 stage. This extra stage helps slower Pokemon to outpace fast ones, and others to outpace Scarfers. It is nice for hazard setters to get up that extra layer, Shell Smashers to get that extra speed boost, and stored power users appreciate the extra 40 base power from every proc. In spot 146, I have Power Construct. This is a form changing ability for Zygarde and can change it into its complete form when brought below half HP. This raises Zygarde's BST from 600 to 708 with a massive HP boost and losing a bit of speed. It easily makes up for the speed by being able to set up Dragon Dances with its extra bulk and creating fat substitutes. It is a way better option than Aura Break. It makes Zygarde viable in Ubers, since without Power Construct, it is pretty easy to deal with. Onto 145, I have Chilling Neigh. This is pretty much Moxie, but exclusive to Glastrier. If Glastrier attacks and KOs its target, it will gain an attack boost. For a mon as shafted by typing and move pool as Glastrier, Chilling Neigh is a redeemable quality that can at least let it flourish in Trick Room teams. This ability can snowball and let the slow Ice Horse pick up KOs it wouldn't be able to otherwise. It isn't on the best mon, but helps a slow mono ice type be feared in lower tiers. Spot 144, Does Bite. This goes to Strongjaw. This ability powers up biting moves by 50%. This is a pretty sizable boost, turning even the Fang moves into pretty strong options. It is great on Mega Sharpedo for its crunches. Dracovish destroys teams with ultra boosted Fishious Rend, and plenty of mons get super strong coverage options like Psychic Fangs and Poison Fang, which carry great additional effects. It helps that it's distributed to good physical attackers that learn a lot of boosted moves. In spot 143, I have Flame Body. In my opinion, this is a solid amount better than Static, which has a similar effect. Instead of a 30% chance of inducing paralysis on contact, Flame Body has a burn chance. Since these abilities activate on contact, there's a very good chance they will be activating on physical attackers. So burning them will almost always cripple them more than paralysis. They can become setup fodder and scared to click attacks due to this ability. Nothing worse than you turning your Scizor on the Moltres switch in, or trying to KO that Volcarona and holding your breath hoping you don't get burned and lose your sweep. Above Flame Body in spot 142 is the new ability Electromorphosis. This is Bellibolt's signature ability and gives it the charge effect when hit by a damaging move. This will double the power of the next electric type move used. So Bellibolt's Thunderbolts and Discharges, coming off its already solid 103 special attack, will do a hell of a lot more damage. It can take a hit or two with its solid bulk and typing, and with slack off recovery, this ability is easy to get a lot of uses out of. In spot 141 is Anger Shell. This signature ability of Cloth will activate if hit below 50% and give an attack, special attack, and speed boost at the cost of lowering defenses by 1 stage each. It's like a poor man's Shell Smash, but activates passively, which is pretty sweet. With Cloth's middling speed and decent attack, the boosts are greatly appreciated to let it attempt a sweep. This ability can also activate multiple times to give more boosts. And even though Cloth is a terrible Pokemon competitively, the ability is pretty ballin' and only helps. But what else do you expect from a Mono Rock 450 BST mod? On to spot 140 is another one of my favorite abilities in Iron Fist. It boosts the power of punching moves by 20%. This definitely sounds lackluster compared to something like Strongjaw's 50% increase, but it does have a lot of users and more moves that can take advantage of it. Hitmonlee, along with the Conkeldurr, Golurk, Crabominable, and Infernape lines all love the boosted damage and recovery from Drain Punch. Other staple moves like Mach Punch, the Elemental Punches, and Bullet Punch get nice boosts too. Then there are some sweet signature moves that get great boosts like Ice Hammer and the terribly broken Double Iron Bash. This ability is used on most Pokemon who get it, only really having competition from other amazing abilities like Golurk's No Guard and Konk's Guts. Spots 139 and 138 go to Clear Body and Full Metal Body. These function the same as White Smoke, but are way higher thanks to the users. The prevented stat drops favor Pokemon like Tentacruel, Metagross, the Regis, Dragapult, and Diancie a lot more. It is great for preventing Sticky Web speed drops, Intimidate drops, and other common stat lowering moves like Snarl, Icy Wind, and Parting Shot. Full Metal Body is exclusive to Solgaleo and is slightly better as it cannot be ignored by Mold Breaker, which can help out in some odd situations. Moving up to 137 is a very good ability in Harvest. Yeah, I know these jokes are bad, but I want to add some nuance to ability introductions. Harvest has a 50% chance to replenish a consumed held berry at the end of each turn. This is guaranteed in Harsh Sunlight and works unless the berry has been knocked off, or picked up, destroyed, or eaten by another Pokemon. It can be a pain in the ass ability to deal with, as substitute Leech Seed harvest sets with citrus berries can destroy unprepared teams. You can essentially get infinite heals unless you get very unlucky. This also works with stat boosting berries, so you could even spam stat boost with Harvest, although the citrus berry tech is definitely the best, working well on Executor, Arboliva, and shout out to Rambat's Tropius, who has to have made hundreds, if not thousands of gamers rage quit. Spot 136 brings us back to a signature form change ability in Ice Face. It belongs to Ice-Q and lets it take a physical hit without taking any damage. After taking a physical hit, it transforms into its Noise Face, which changes it from defensive stats to more offensive. Ice-Q isn't great itself, but with this ability, it threatens a sub belly drum sweep if up against a physical attacker. This ability can also reactivate if hail or snow gets set, restoring the Ice Face. A forgettable mon for sure, but the ability doesn't let it down as much as its typing, stats, and terrible move pool do. 135 left to rank, and here I have Gulp Missile.
Oh, big gulps, huh? Alright.
Talk about your sweet abilities on mediocre mons. When Cramorant uses Surf or Dive, it catches prey and changes form. If it is over half HP, it grabs an Arrokuda, and if under 50%, it catches a Pikachu. When hit by an attack, it launches its catch at the attacker. This deals 1/4 of the attacker's max HP and chip damage, and either lowers their defense by a stage or paralyzes them if it's Pikachu. It's a pretty crazy effect, as all you have to do to activate it is use a pretty strong stab water move. This would be insanely annoying if it was on a decent Pokemon, as Cramorant itself has low and middling stats and can still be pretty annoying to deal with. The chip damage is massive, and getting pretty much a free para that can affect ground types is pretty nutty. Great ability on a bad mon. In spot 134, we have the boosting ability Mega Launcher. This ability boosts the power of Aura and Pulse moves by 50%. Clawitzer and Mega Blastoise take advantage of boosted Stab Water Pulse, along with gaining super powerful coverage in Aura Sphere, which is now a drawback-free Focus Blast. It boosts other moves like Dark Pulse and Dragon Pulse, and it also boosts the healing of Heal Pulse. This is pretty good on Clawitzer, who is otherwise very underwhelming, but it was really cemented as a good ability on Mega Blastoise, who has a bit more speed, power, and bulk to get off more boosted attacks. If we ever get Shell Smash Mega Blastoise in-game, this ability will be even more threatening with the pseudo stab coverage. In spot 133, I have Photosynthesis. This is an ability seen on Paradox Pokemon that boosts their highest stat in harsh sunlight. It can also be activated by the item Booster Energy, but this is a consumable effect. The boost isn't a stat change and is 30% or 50% for speed. It can be a really good ability on Pokemon like Walking Wake, Gouging Fire, and Roaring Moon, as they have stats that synergize well with it. On some of the other Pokemon, it isn't worth running a Booster Energy over another item, so you might just not use an ability. It's hard to rank because it can either have a huge effect or no effect at all. Of course, right above Photosynthesis in spot 132 is Quark Drive. This kind of depends on your view of which mons overall are better at using these abilities. It functions the same as Photosynthesis, but the catalyst for activating it is Electric Terrain. Booster Energy can still be used too, and is seen on a handful of these guys. It is nice on mons like Iron Treads to be a bulky answer to Miraidon and Fluttermane. Other users like Iron Jugulus, Hands, Moth, and Valiant all like to run Booster Energy to activate their ability. It is close, but I feel like Quark Drive has an overall better roster of users than Photosynthesis. On to spot 131 is the ability Rockhead. The users of this ability have such good head that they will take no recoil from recoil attacks. It is tremendous we finally got a really good user in Hisuian Arcanine who can abuse moves like Flare Blitz and Head Smash without taking a million damage in return. Alolan Marowak is a pretty great user with Flare Blitz. It can be solid with Woodhammer Sudowoodo, but is usually just a Head Smash nuke on the rock types that have access to both. And can I just say, they really did my boy Aerodactyl dirty. Just give him Brave Bird and Head Smash for crying out loud. Moving on to spot 130, I have Toxic Boost. This ability turns Zangoose into a powerful wall breaker by increasing the power of its physical moves 1.5 times when poisoned. While this is similar to Guts, it only works for poison, forcing Zangoose to hold a less ideal item in the Toxic Orb. It still lets this mon with only one good stat be a lower tier menace that could even do some damage in middle tiers. This functions well with Stab Facade, boosting it to crazy levels of damage, and with solid coverage and priority quick attack, Toxic Boost Zangoose can be a threatening wall breaker against slower teams. It is also one of the goats and Ranbats, but yeah, it is essentially a poor man's Guts. In spot 129 is the weather ability Slush Rush. This ability doubles the user's speed if hail or snow are active. It allowed the mediocre fossils with access a chance to shine and spam their crazy signature moves that rely on them being faster. Alolan Sandslash and Sea Titan could also make use of it as well with their solid attack stats. This ability is definitely best on Arctozoke, who cemented itself on hail teams in its one active generation. It will be cool to see that brought back with a new defense buff, plus Aurora Veil allowing it to tank more hits and do more damage. Spot 128 goes to Inner Focus. This previously would have been in the not useless tier, I feel, because it used to only protect the user from flinching. But now it also blocks Intimidate, making it heaps more viable. It is even often used in doubles on Dragonite over the great multiscale because avoiding a fake out flinch is so valuable, coupled with not being affected by Intimidate spam. Other Pokemon like Entei, Lucario, Sneasel, Oranguru, and Umbreon appreciate it as well. It's nice to not get slowed down by these very common support options, bringing inner focus from meh ability to really good. In spot 127, I have Mirror Armor, which is a signature ability of Corviknight. Mirror Armor reflects any stat drops targeted towards this mon onto the original Pokemon. So if you Icy Wind Corv, the user will get its speed drop instead. Same with Intimidate. This is a funny one since it isn't seen too much in singles because Corviknight loves to pressure stall, but in the faster paced doubles metas, it is pretty much exclusively used. Reflecting Intimidate, Snarls, and Icy Winds back against the opponent is a huge advantage to have. This is another one that would be great to see added to another line or two. And spot 126 is a godly ability, as in, it is on our god, Arceus. This is multi-type. Of course I had to put this above RKS system. This is the OG, not a cheap knockoff. Multi-type changes the form and type of the user based on their held plate or Z crystal. This is just a more versatile version of RKS system, as the plates themselves give a 20% power boost to moves of their typing. So while Silvally can really only have its 120 base power physical multi-attack, Arceus has the option to run his signature move Judgment, which is special and boosted to 120 base power with a plate, or run other options like Earthquake or Flare Blitz on Arceus Ground and Fire. This boosts these moves to 120 and 144 power physical stab attacks, or you could use moves like Sledge Bomb on Arceus Poison for a slightly weaker 108 base power attack, but having that nice poison chance. This could be argued higher, but I feel like some of the benefits come from the plate boosts themselves, and the ability mostly just gives the preferred typing. In spot 125, the ability Trace shows up. It's the ability that copies other abilities. This can make it extremely useful, or just alright. There are a few abilities it cannot copy, mostly form changing, and it can even copy Wonder Guard. But it is typically useful for copying immunity abilities like Heatran's Flash Fire to swap in on Magma Storm, Water and Volt Absorb against mons who like using those moves. It can copy other abilities like Magnet Pull and Arena Trap to counter trapping. It can copy other useful abilities like Levitate to avoid ground moves, Poison Heal, Regenerator, Natural Cure to heal its status, and so many more. It really depends on your matchup, but there are so many opportunities to nab a great ability and use it against your opponent. In spot 124, I have Competitive, a really good ability on special attackers that raises their special attack by 2 stages if they have a stat lowered by another Pokemon. It is obviously more useful in doubles where stat dropping is more common, but it can be pretty good in singles as moves like Parting Shot and Sticky Webs are commonly used. It has a slight advantage over Defiant since the attack drop of Intimidate still gives you +2, while Defiant will only give you a +1. The downside is the lack of strong users that can take advantage of this ability in comparison. This is why in spot 123 I have Defiant. It is just like Competitive, but raises the user's attack by 2 stages. It is definitely seen on deadlier users like the King Gambit line, Annihilate, Ogerpon, and Zapdos, while seeing some lower tier play from mods like Braviary, Passimian, and Phalanx. You get a boost for every different stat that is lowered, so it makes it great to swap into Parting Shot and grab a mega boost on these really strong attackers that usually can put in more work than the generally weaker competitive users. On to spot 122 is another attack boosting ability in Intrepid Sword. This Zacian exclusive ability raises a user's attack by 1 stage the first time it comes out. Definitely was busted when it activated every time, but it's a lot more balanced now thankfully. It's still really strong as a 3+1 on this monstrous attack stat hits super hard, and there's a solid chance you're sending in Zacian to get off Mondo damage. Without the ability active, Zacian can now struggle to break through the bulkier Uber walls, so having this boost really helps the doggo. One of the most nerfed abilities shows up in spot 121 in Gale Wings. This is Talonflame's signature ability and used to be one of the GOATs, as it increased the priority of flying type moves for the user. This only works if the user is at full health now, which really hurts. It's still a really good ability for priority Tailwind, keeping it relevant in doubles, and you can still use it for priority Defog and Brave Bird in singles. This would be a lot higher if it kept its old properties, but it's still a really strong ability that has shifted mainly towards support. Spot 120 is the ability Sand Rush. This is our second speed doubling weather ability, and this one works in Sandstorm. It allows strong attackers like Excadrill and the Fossils to outpace the opposition. These Pokemon for the most part are really slow, but with the speed boost, become really tough to swap into. It also provides an immunity to Sandstorm damage for Pokemon like Stoutland, Houndstone, and the Fossils who aren't otherwise immune. It's all around a really solid ability that gives Sand teams more reason to be ran. On to spot 119 and 118, it's identical signature move time again with Dazzling and Queenly Majesty. These abilities protect the user and allies from priority moves. These are overall great abilities in singles and doubles, protecting against common moves like Fake Out, Sucker Punch, Prankster moves, and more can limit the opponent's game plan considerably. It is a shame the users are not very good in singles or doubles, so these support abilities could see more use. I had a tough time ranking these because we see how good the ability can be on another mon, so I felt like near the top of good was warranted. In spot 117, I have the form changing Shields Down. It is another signature form changing ability stuck on a crappy mon, but this ability itself is really good. Shields Down puts Minior in its Meteor form when above 50%, preventing it from being statused. When going below 50%, Minior transforms to its core form, losing the status condition immunity, but gaining a ton of speed and swapping its higher defenses with its lower offenses. This allows this pretty low BST mon a fighting chance to get a Shell Smash off and do some late game sweeping. In spot 116, I have another speed boosting weather ability in Chlorophyll. This doubles the user's speed when harsh sunlight is active and is very commonly ran on sun teams. A lot of Pokemon are really only seen thanks to this ability, most notably Venusaur and Lilligant. When paired up with Sunsetters, this can provide fast Sleep Powder, Solar Beam, and Weather Ball attacking support. It definitely raises the viability of a lot of mons that are underwhelming otherwise, as speed is huge. Spot 115 is the stat boosting ability Download. This will increase the user's attack or special attack on switch-in depending on the foe's currently lower defensive stat. So if they have lower defense, you get an attack boost, and vice versa. It's exclusive to the Porygon line and Genesect, and they both find great use. A free attack or special attack buff every time you swap in is honestly great, and you will generally know which boost you're getting based on the opposing mod. Genesect often runs mixed sets anyways, so you are boosting at least one of its attacks, while the Porygon line prefers a special attack boost for its great coverage. Spot 114 is Seed Sower. Okay, hear me out. Arboliva isn't great competitively, but grassy terrain is amazing to have and complements this Pokemon greatly. When hit by a damaging move, Arboliva will activate grassy terrain for 5 turns. It is nice for boosting its grass stab while providing a good chip recovery. This mon can be pretty annoying to take out thanks to this ability, as its Giga Drains will be healing more in combination with the passive terrain healing and leftovers. Eject button can be used as good synergy to get the terrain activated and swap in a teammate that wants to cook with it. It gives this Pokemon a positive unique trait where it would likely otherwise just be completely forgotten. Tell me if I'm reaching too far with this ranking. This next ability rocks. In spot 113, Punk Rock takes the stage. This is probably in my top 5 personal favorite abilities. The user's sound-based moves have a 1.3 times boost while also taking half damage from sound-based moves themselves. It is only seen on Toxtricity, which actually allows it to hit like a truck. It is otherwise pretty slow and frail, but don't sleep on its Boom Burst and Stab Overdrive. It can further boost with Throat Spray, which is activated by these sound-based moves and is a good way to punch a hole in stall. Spot 112 is the ability Sap Sipper. It provides full immunity to grass type moves, and if the user is hit by one, it raises their attack by 1 stage. This can be amazing for shutting down Spore, Leech Seed, Strength Sap, while also blocking popular attacks like Giga Drain, Grassy Glide, and Wood Hammer. The attack boost is the icing on the cake, as a lot of the users are more physically geared. Perish Trap Azumarill enjoyed this, the Goodra forms can shut down grass attempts, while in lower tiers mons like Miltank, Go-Goat, and Bouffalant enjoy an immunity that can turn into extra damage. Our last ability for this video, in spot 111, right outside the Great tier, I have the last embody aspect with her Flame Mask. This is on the fire type Ogerpon and gives an attack boost when terrestrialized, activating every switch in. This provides incredible damage output as +1 attack with boosted stab moves shreds through teams without a good counter. It helped get this Ogerpon variation banned to Ubers and is quite good in VGC as well, making it an all-around good ability just shy of the Great tier. And with that, we have completed the good tier. This leaves us with only the top tiers for part 3, which will likely be the 2024 closer on the MatBud channel. If you watched this far, leave a Baba Booey in the comment section.
Baba Booey.
And make sure you let me know which abilities you think are ranked too high and too low. Include your reasoning as well for my eventually revised list. Thanks again, buds, for the support, and I'll see you for part 3.